Hello, I have been having a bit of fun with ChatGPT, and today I asked it to name 7 things that Americans do that British people don't. And as a British person who has lived in America for 17 years, I'm going to go through this list with you and tell you the degree to which it's accurate. Why? Because uncovering memos that Britain and America lost in the pond is what I do on this channel, and if you've not yet subscribed, do that now. In the meantime, here's what ChatGPT came up with. And the first thing on the list is pledge allegiance to the flag in school. This is not something that I ever did when I went to school in the UK. I'm trying to think of the nearest thing to that. I suppose we sometimes sang the national anthem. No, I don't remember doing that. I don't think we're that patriotic in school, whereas in America they are. Now, I moved here at the age of 26, so I never went to school in America, but this is something that I've heard from people, is that you do indeed pledge allegiance to the flag. What does that mean, Lawrence? Well, it basically means that you prove your loyalty to the United States by saying some words. How do I know that? Because I myself did pledge allegiance to the flag when I became a United States citizen. In fact, now that I think about it, that might have been the only time I was required to do so. Why do Americans do this? Well, there is a sort of ingrained national pride within this young country that broke away from my country. I think that pride, that sense of patriotism, it shows itself in many different ways, and it isn't just aligned to one political party. I've seen American flags on the porches of people in rural Indiana just as much as I have here in Chicago. I don't have a problem with that, even though I don't personally wave flags, and those flags behind me aren't flags, they're bags that happen to have flags on them. The second thing that ChatGPT came up with is that Americans are more likely to drive automatic cars than British people who prefer to use manual. This is true. Growing up, most of the cars that my dad had the gear stick. And I noticed after I moved here that was a far less common feature of cars. In fact, sometimes I've had conversations with Americans who see driving a stick, as they call it, being something they prefer not to do given the choice. Now, I'm no car expert, but it seems that there are a number of valid reasons that Britain does manual and America does automatic. In America, you've got longer distances to travel, generally speaking, so it's nice to just have that kind of convenient transmission. And there's a perception here that there's a higher frequency of traffic lights / stoplights, and so driving manual would be a pain in the arse. And historically, manual cars in Britain are cheaper, they were more fuel efficient, which is important in Britain where the cost of fuel is greatly higher than it is in the United States. You know, as a Brit living in America, I've had to adapt to many things. The time difference, spelling colour without a U, and most recently, drinking coffee that's so cold it could legally be considered an Arctic beverage. But I'm not just talking about the sad, neglected cup that you left in the microwave for 3 hours. I'm talking about real cold brew, the kind you can actually look forward to in the morning. And thanks to Trade Coffee, I can now make it at home without spending a small fortune at cafes that think artisan means $5 extra. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the US for both hot and cold drinkers. They've teamed up with 15 expert roasters to create a cold brew collection. Not just a random bag off the shelf, these are beans with purpose. It's wildly simple. Scoop the coffee, fill with water, chill overnight, and Bob's your uncle. Cold brew that tastes better than anything I've ever found in a store fridge, and it actually smells like it was roasted this decade. For a limited time, Trade is giving away a free Hario cold brewer when you sign up for a cold brew subscription when you go to drinktrade.com/LITP. That's drinktrade.com/LITP to get your free cold brew maker with select cold brew subscriptions. That's drinktrade.com/LITP. The link is in my description below. Number 3, eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Long-term fans of this channel will know that I myself have tried a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on camera in what was possibly the most controversial moment in this channel's history, because I took it upon myself to use the only bread that I had in the house to make this sandwich, and that bread was sourdough. This was seen as a big no-no among the sandwich eating community that is the United States of America, and I got into big trouble for doing that. But basically, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is exactly as it sounds. Except jelly, I should clarify for my British viewers, is not jello, as Americans would call it, the wobbly It's something that closely resembles jam. Do I like it? Well, I do now, but it took me a while to come to terms with that fact, because I think when I first moved here, I'd never had peanut butter. We just don't have it in great abundance in the UK. And so this was something that was introduced to me only after I moved to America, and it took me a while to say to myself, yes, I prefer this over regular butter. It is fair to say that they're not really comparable anyway, because I think that regular butter isn't protein based. And so I did actually come to find, especially times when I didn't have much money, that it made for a very quick, easy meal. Sometimes I wouldn't even put the jelly on it. I would just have peanut butter on bread. It's very dry and I wouldn't recommend it. I'll tell you who does love peanut butter though. My dog, Heidi. Who's Heidi? You probably think it's my new dog. It's Arthur's new sister. A lot of American dog owners use peanut butter in order to get their pets to consume medicine. Heidi has just been spayed, so she's on gabapentin, and I'm not really sure she knows it because she's just excited about that. Number 4, Americans call the ground floor the first floor. Why do they do that? Well, when you stop and think about it, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. What we call the ground floor in the UK is also the first floor. It's the first floor you enter as you walk in. It just happens to be on the ground. This is one of those situations where I think both Brits and Americans are correct. Except in Britain, when you get to what Americans refer to as the second floor, we refer to that as the first floor. I suppose it is the first floor that you get to in the elevator. I might be trying to justify British logic. I can't justify it now. Does it make sense? You can answer this in the comments. Does it make sense that the next floor up is floor 2 or floor 1? Number 5, watch ads for prescription drugs. I come from a country where the advertisement of prescription-only drugs is actually illegal, so you never see those on television. In fact, from memory, the only real ads I can remember that were for medicines of any kind were usually for things like headache medicine. What we're talking about is all kinds of drugs, you know, not class A, but medical drugs that your doctor will prescribe. Now, this isn't something that Americans love to do. It's not like we go, ooh, get the popcorn because they're pushing Ozempic on us again. I think we've become desensitized to them in this country because they're so pervasive. We just sort of take it for granted. I, for one, switch off while they're playing. I don't even take it in until they get to the part where they have to warn you of the side effects. I don't know if some law changed recently, but can you remember how they used to speed it up? Because, you know, it's like, we don't really want people to know that this drug can harm you. Let's get through that as quickly as possible. Recently, I've noticed that those ads, they have to say them at the same speed that they're doing the rest of the ad, and it completely derails the momentum of the entire ad. And I love that. It's my favorite thing. In fact, I think next time that happens, I really will get the popcorn out. Number 6, and perhaps a reason that Americans get pushed so many healthcare related things, Americans deep fry everything at the fair. Now, I've not been to a fair in Britain in many years, so I can't really remember if this is something that happens there or not, and whether or not ChatGPT is lying. All I can remember about fairs in the UK is the abundance of candy floss, or cotton candy as it's known here. But at American fairs, whether it's a state fair or a county fair, you have things like corn dogs, at least you do here in the Midwest, which is basically a hot dog on a stick that's covered in fried cornmeal batter. You have elephant ears, which are not genuine elephant ears, right? Which is basically fried dough, and just lots of stuff like that. And I don't personally mind it. You know, it's obviously a one-off occasion. It's not like you're going to do this every day. The thing is, these fairs tend to take place during summer months, and when it's really hot outside, I don't want something that's deep fried. I want something that's like refreshing, like a bloody apple. They'll probably deep fry those next. Have they? They have. Right. But I just did a little bit of research because I was curious, having not had a memory of this. In Britain, it appears that we do deep fried foods at fairs as well. And ChatGPT is clearly not entirely to be trusted. However, I will say this, it appears that the deep fried options at American fairs are more abundant and more extravagant, it seems, than those at UK fairs, where there seems to be a greater emphasis on other American foods like burgers and hot dogs. And finally, red Solo cups. I've seen variations of this observation online that basically says, ooh, in American films, when people are at parties, they always have these red plastic cups. I think the understanding among British people and people from countries that aren't America is that this thing is kind of like the, 555 area codes that are used in films, but not in real life. The truth is, Americans use red Solo cups in real life, and this has been something that's caused a lot of amazement, astonishment among British people. I don't really get it. This isn't something that I lost sleep over when I lived in Britain and then moved to America, partly because I don't think I even made that observation. They're just cups to me. But I think the thing is, when I'd go to parties in Britain, we'd usually drink out of whatever glass we could find that was clean, or just straight out of the bottle. I didn't think much of it really. You know, it's not like all Americans just have these red plastic Solo cups on hand at any given moment. I mean, we don't. At least I thought we didn't. And then I found out that my wife, Tara, was storing some up in this cupboard for when family turns up. So since I no longer drink alcohol, I might as well get the doggies a drink. Of water, not vodka. In the meantime, here are the 7 most baffling things about US grocery stores. You'll watch that video next. And until the next video, goodbye.